Niki, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Hope you are too.
Yeah, doing all right. Thank you very much. Bit windswept. Not March. Just moved into March. Got a few nice weather days, and then today happened. So anyway, I'm going to moan about that. It's a very British thing to moan about the weather, isn't it? So traditionally, we ask people to give us a little potted history of their career to date. So if you could kick off with that'd be great. Thanks.
I love that. I won't take you through the full chronological order, but I'd say that I grew up in digital media. First role at Teletext Holidays. So for those that don't know who Teletext Holidays are, they were the holiday providers where you'd book holidays from your TV, but we have advanced massively. I'd say my career has spanned from both buy side to sell side. So moving on from Teletext, think of the History Channel, think of Collective before it changed to Azerion.
I worked at Collective.
Did you? Oh my God.
I was at Web TV that was acquired by Collective.
Yes. Oh gosh. With Simon Stone and Jamie. Love Jamie. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So absolutely. I loved my time there and I loved my colleagues there. So, if you're watching this, big up to you guys. But I'd say my career, I grew up in the digital industry and obviously from your traditional buying, the networks were born, let's say. I remember being at the History Channel and an agency saying to me, I can buy your inventory for £2. And I thought, hold on, no, you can't. Because I'd know if we're integrated into a network. Anyway, fast forward, now we're in programmatic. So I've been lucky enough to be exposed to both the buy side, sell side. I've worked for measurement companies and platforms, let's say, so attention measurement, as well as marketplaces. So I understand the end-to-end, I'd say each sort of point of detail that needs to go into successful campaign planning. Not just that, delivery, and then understanding what reporting looks like and sort of, going from there. So I've been really, really lucky in that sense to have that exposure rather than being pigeonholed to one facet and not understand what the ecosystem looks like.
Cool. Yeah, I always think that's the agency side coming to the client side happened quite early in my career in press. I was working at the Evening Standard and I always thought that's a really smart move because you get somebody that's been in an agency for ages and they kind of know how the agency works and what the agency needs and how we should tailor how we sell to that agency based on what the agency needs. And of course, they know the people in the agency as well. So I always think it's one of our clients, Dom at TapTap's been agency side and then client side and the tech side. And I think that gives you a really rounded view of what's going on, isn't it? If you're only ever looking from one side, there's only so much you can learn.
And that's Dom Wolf. Yeah, lots of love for Dom. He's absolutely great. And you sort of hit the nail on the head. But then having said that, each agency, let's say holding group, you've got independents, the structures are totally different. Some of the larger ones may have similar, obviously you've got comms planners and you've got buying teams. You've got planning teams and the buying teams who negotiate, trading teams, etc. So, it is, quite exactly. Yeah, exactly. Display teams. And exactly. And this is where this fragmentation sort of comes into play. And I think that's where it can get confusing for brands and especially certain agencies that are trying to enter the market. There's so many local, let's say, brands out there. There's local agencies. Look at Leeds, look at Liverpool, Newcastle, Edinburgh, Bristol, Bath. There's so many hubs out there, digital hubs. So it's about, I'd say, sharing information, understanding the ecosystem. I love that word, ecosystem, or Lumascape, as we call it. But it's about understanding that and understanding that structure and being able to, talk about it confidently. And that's where you'll get, I'd say, ideas or ways that, we can actually work smarter collectively.
For sure. And you're at SBS now. So tell us about SBS. Who are they? What do they do? Who do they do it with? That sort of stuff.
Who did we come from? Or where did we come from? Where did we go? SBS. So we're an independent agency that acts as a partner to other independent agencies and brands. So it's not about competition or anything like that. I say SBS is an enabler, allowing access to our very crowded marketplace. So SBS, we're totally agnostic.
What does it stand for?
Scientific-based solutions. Thank you for asking that. And that's what it stands for.
I was thinking I was going to buy a sofa for them at one point. It sounds a little bit like DFS, like there's SBS. Yeah.
There's lots.
You don't sell sofas, right?
Not yet. Well, DFS, if you want to come and,
You enable the selling of sofas.
Yes, we do indeed. But SBS, what we do, as I mentioned, we act as a partner. So it's not about putting blockers out there. It's not about competing. It's about allowing access to, our crowded marketplace, working closely, and I say this quite a lot, with independent brands and agencies on their digital marketing strategy. So what we do is we don't operate with minimum spends. There's no faff. There's no hidden costs. Totally transparent. We act as, I'd say, the word curation is thrown around a lot. What we do is that we carefully work with our clients on their own unique, I'd say, their challenges, their strategy, and we basically provide solutions to help with their digital footprint when it comes to measurement and really understanding the holistic view. As I previously touched on, you've got so many individual teams where you've got the comms planner that has the full plan. Sometimes teams look within brands, the larger brands, as well as within agencies. They don't get a chance to cross over, talk, or even really understand what their overall spend looks like when it comes to a dovetail effect and performance. So it's about, just basically having that holistic view for our clients and giving them their confidence in showcasing where their advertising is actually running and where it's going, where they're spending.
Cool.
Yeah, okay. I'm really passionate about that and wastage
Wastage, yeah. So we're going to talk about sustainability a lot today. When we had our little briefing call before this, we came up with the little ditty, smartphones, dumb planet, which I thought we were quite proud of at the time. We might call the podcast that. But can you summarise what we mean by that? What does smartphones, dumb planet mean?
Of course. So by no means are we sort of saying that, humans are dumb or anything like that. It's a case that I think we're becoming so reliant on AI, on our phones, on technology to complete the most simplest tasks for us, which look, for efficiencies, it's absolutely great. But I think we're turning a blind eye in terms of the carbon impact that actually has. Look, the more we use our phones, the more battery power, the more juice we need. And then we have to charge up our phones. And this is just not a phone. These are multiple devices. So it's about being overly reliant on how easy our phones are making our lives. Now, we have to keep in mind as well, our phones collect so much data. Obviously, it depends where you live, ensuring that depending on what sort of compliancy and rules and regulations are within that reason. But I think if we become too reliant on a mobile phone, 1990s, Mercury flip phone. My sister had one, I remember. Mercury 1-to-1 before it became 1-to-1, and then, the story goes on. It's about sort of saturation in terms of using our phones and using them without having any sort of mindfulness around it. So that can sort of lend itself to a few things, but I'll just sort of name two. So again, efficiencies and making us lazier as humans, let's say. And a lot of, let's say, problems that have been solved in the past are human-led. AI is very smart, but again, it depends on the data that you put in, right? It's the answer you get out or the solution you get out is as good as the information you put in. But I think what we're in danger of not, I'd say, using our own initiatives. I'm thinking just in 10 years' time, if we totally fully rely on AI to complete simple tasks for us, what would that look like for our own minds? What would it look like for our roles, and so forth?
Yeah. So you're clearly interested in sustainability. Before we sort of dig into what that looks like, where did that come from? Where did that interest first start? Because we talked about it a lot when we were chatting before we went on air. So where did that sort of desire or passion for sustainability come from? Yeah,
so it started from data centers, funnily enough, and where they're being built, like since 2022. Oh gosh, I couldn't tell you the number. But anyway, a significant amount of data centers are being erected in the States more than anything. Now, there is a call for more, I say, sovereign, like UK or, European-based data centers more than anything. But where it came from was the land that they were using and the land that they were, I'd say, killing to facilitate all this data that is being processed and then stored. And then that's it. And then not to mention the cooling, the fact that data centers constantly need to be cooled, that takes up a lot of energy and a lot of sustainability. It's not very, it's not ethical and it's not eco-friendly. Now, so there's that's hidden, and that will have a knock-on effect on our planet. And I know we work in digital media, we work in tech, everything's literally on a screen, let's say. But to me, it's using up space on the planet for our own, I'd say, reasons. And that is the more technologies, the more platforms that we actually bring out, obviously that data needs to be stored somewhere. So it was more so from that. I was sort of comparing also, what actually happens to the data, or, the creative units that have been built, or, whatever's being stored, what actually happens to it after? If anything, we're building more and more and more and more. Now, there's a lot of energy that's required to obviously sustain and keep these data centers going. Energy can't be destroyed. We know that. So how can we actually use that energy for good? In trying to sort of restrict how much carbon, because we don't even actually know. We don't have, a concrete number of how much carbon the industry actually contributes.
There's estimates, isn't there?
Yeah, the estimate. Everything's an estimate in that sort of stuff.
Do you think it's because it's invisible? It's kind of a little bit of outside, out of mind. That when I was starting my career in press, there was a physical product, and you could see that trees have been cut down to make paper to produce this. Whereas with the internet, if you like, or mobile phones, or any sort of data centers and stuff like that, the energy is kind of invisible, and so because you don't see it, maybe it doesn't play on people's minds. I mean, it was embarrassingly late in my career that I actually thought that the internet was quite clean and sustainable, because I was thinking, well, we're not chopping down trees anymore. This must be much better. And then the penny dropped a number of years ago now, but probably not as early as it should have done. Thinking actually there's an enormous amount of power that's being used to keep these machines running.
Absolutely. And I think it's more so that we wouldn't know that, let's say 10 or 15 years ago. We wouldn't. I'd say more so developers, engineers, etc. But then obviously as we've grown as an industry, we're with billions of pounds are being pumped into our industry. Obviously, with that comes growth. With that comes a knock-on effect. And exactly as you said, it's invisible landfill. That's what I sort of, refer to as, all things digital in that sort of sense that aren't being used. So that takes me sort of back to our supply path, rather than layering on individual. There's so many different, obviously, tools, platforms, and many, I'd say, measurement layers that we actually put onto our campaigns and run when we're running across the open market, to say the least. Like the open market, that's like the wild west. Obviously, if you're looking at audiences, etc., you can sort of pinpoint who you want to target. But what I'm trying to say is, the more that we contribute towards that, there will be a knock-on effect. So we collectively need to come together as an industry, which there's a lot of talk about. And I know sustainability may not be super high up on certain companies' lists or organizations. It's a tick on the box. But I think overall that helps. When you're thinking sustainability, when you're thinking supply path, when it comes to planning, buying and running, activations, by cleaning that up, you're cutting costs, you're reducing inefficiencies, and you're actually doing better, let's say, for the planet, rather than driving a lot of wastage.
So if we think of a very real example then, so if you're, let's say you're a DSP, this is not hating on DSPs, it's the whole ecosystem, but you might be plugged into 15 SSPs, let's say, or supply sources, and there's billions and billions and billions of ad requests being sent to you every minute. And you're only taking a certain amount of those, but each one of those ad requests has a unit of energy, right? I don't know exactly what it is, and it could be estimated, but it's a unit of energy. And so if you're seeing 1 billion ad requests and you only need 100,000, then obviously there's a huge wastage there. Is that kind of what we're talking about here? We're talking about the amount of things that happen that don't necessarily need to happen, or could be made more efficient so that they don't happen.
Yeah, no, exactly that. And I worked for Freewheel, and Freewheel actually capped the amount of impressions a publisher or CTV partner could actually send in. Because for starters, it would cost a lot to process that data, but then not to mention, like you said, just the inefficiencies. And, there are so many websites out there. There's so much more content. Everyone wants to be an influencer now. I remember saying to my colleague, I was at Collective then, and I remember saying, I want to be famous. I always wanted to be a TV presenter, as you know, guys. I want to be famous. And he said, well, you've got to be famous for something. And I thought, oh, yeah. And then now, fast forward 10 minutes later, the internet has made everything so accessible. It's crazy. So everyone's their own individual brand. So you've got all these pockets of people. You've got brands. You've got emerging brands. You've got so much content out there. Like, so much. And it's all fragmented. And it's about, trying to organize the space, I think. There's lots of platforms of technology, credible. Like, I love our industry. I really, really do, which is why I'm really passionate about it. But I'm also passionate about wastage. I hate wasting money. I think that's just me as a person. I spend a lot of money on people and food. I love feeding people. But when I'm seeing, let's say, 2 MPUs, literally one under the other on a website that it could have been, I could have clicked out from a native unit or whatever. That's not good. That's not efficient. We need to be a lot more transparent with our brands in terms of where their advertisements are actually going. And obviously there are, there's precautions in place like frequency capping and all these, I'd say, efficiencies that you can add to the campaign. But I think the more, again, we work together. So going back to your example with the DSP and working with 15 SSPs, is that the DSP's responsibility to make sure that they're, I'd say, duping, let's say the publisher that are coming in or the ad calls are coming in? So I think it's like more of an industry-wide challenge. And then you've got, the IAB Tech Lab that are bringing out, oh God, forgive me, I forgot the name. Sorry, but it's almost like they're using agentic AI to help brands, I'd say, smartly plan their activity, showcasing where their ads are likely to run. And you're getting all this information beforehand, before a decision's been made.
I think the elephant in the room here is capitalism, right? It's making money, and that's essentially the number one thing. I was speaking to Ollie at the Good Net on the podcast a while ago, and I think if sustainability is important to some people, but only to a point, because it's about profit. If you're in, I don't know, marketing or advertising or sales, you have to make money. And that's kind of the primary objective. So how do you think about? I think there probably is a few brands out there that just put sustainability first and then everything else second, but it's a few and it's not going to make enough of a dent in the problem, is it? So the stuff that you touched upon there is whose responsibility is it? And I think that my personal view is it's everybody's responsibility, but how does it get policed? If we just leave everybody to do their own thing, we talked about how it's invisible, can't really see it, we're trying to make money. The way we make money is we use this ad tech, which there's a huge amount of wastage in it, but we get what we want out of it, which is a profit. And so how do we make sustainability profitable, I guess? How do the two things coexist?
So, really good point. Governance is really important. So getting frameworks together, but incorporating AI, because AI, everyone likes to say, oh, we use AI, but what AI? Who is it for? How are you using it? And you're right, it is about the bottom line. And that's the thing. By being sustainable, let's say, and it's up to a business how they're going to be sustainable, you're able to cut costs and improve efficiencies. And
should it be up to, sorry to interrupt, but should it be up to businesses though, or should it be mandated by government?
Both. There's lots of businesses out there that have contributed to, government schemes and sort of, promising to get to net zero by 2030. You've got, brands such as, let's say, Unilever or a P&G. They've got physical products, but then they run a shed load of advertising. So it's about, how to meet in the middle, but then working with governments and looking at what that mandate looks like. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but are there digital specialists within governments to our sort of our understanding? Does that make sense? I've not really come across any. So it's about that education, awareness, and I think it should be a collective approach. You can take what's that saying? You can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. It's sort of like that. And money, yeah, look, it's really, really important. But if you're actually literally burning more money than you actually know, it's fine. You're getting, your P&Ls, you're looking at them. But look at your outgoings. Look at how much you're spending on making this money, because something will give there, I think. So it's about just really digging deep.
Where do you think it is in terms of priorities at the moment? And this is just a feeling. I have no stats or facts to back this up, but it felt like a few years ago, sustainability was a really big thing and everyone was talking about it, and every brand was trying to be sustainable and talk about sustainability, and then they were accused of greenwashing if they didn't sort of walk the walk and all of the rest of it. But it feels like it, as a topic generally, just in the blogosphere, if you like, it's kind of it's softened down a little bit.
I mean, I think sustainability was looked at, nice to have, like DE&I, that's a nice to have, but that's another conversation. It has. I do believe that it has gone down on the rankings. I think organizations do want to, again, tick that box, we're sustainable. I think that there should be a lot more importance on it. And the reason why I say this is because today's day and age, I'm not going to tell anyone how old I am or how young I am. Initiatives such as recycling, such as being, more eco-friendly, like Gen Zs nowadays, and more of the upcoming, I'd say, audiences, right? They recycle, they don't smoke anymore, they vape, but that's another physical challenge there about that. But it's like they lend themselves to things that have, let's say, been recycled or helping the planet. So that lends itself really nicely. And I think when brands are involved with that, there's a better association and perception of the brand. I mean, if you think about COVID, right? All brands, they stopped advertising. They did. And do you know what I thought? I thought, oh God, it would actually be nice to see a brand saying, do you know what, we care about you. Everyone's like, oh my God, just stop. And there were a few brands. I remember thinking that. So there's almost like a public responsibility to a certain degree. Again, depending on, how much that particular brand or advertiser or technology contributes to the digital, I'd say, ecosystem. But, again, it's going back to an education piece.
That's an interesting way to think about it. It's down to the individuals. So if enough individuals demand sustainable practices, products, then the brands will react to that. If nobody's asking for it, nobody seems to care. Maybe they don't need to react as much. Perhaps it's the power in the people.
Power in the people, absolutely. Look, petitions, you have to get a certain amount of signatures and, I think if we can ignore the problem, in 20 years' time, it's going to be we might have a, apocalypse or something of the net. Literally the amount of water that's required, the energy that's required, etc. We don't know how it will fare well with or for the planet. More than anything. I
forget the number, but I think it runs to the billions in terms of how much OpenAI are spending, and they're just one of the platforms like on the infrastructure to power ChatGPT and the like. And you talked about it earlier, the size of the data centers, the cooling of those data centers, the huge amount of power that they're kind of using, and then you've got Anthropic and Google and like all of the others as well. So today, do you think AI is sustainable?
Today?
Yeah.
Not so much, but I think it can be.
Okay. So how can it be? What would that look like?
Okay, so using AI for
Just asking you to solve the world's problems here, Niki. Yeah.
hopefully, no, using AI for good. I sort of alluded to it before. What's it for? Who's it for, and why is it being built? Because everyone's like, oh, AI. You've got individual platforms. You've got OpenAI. You've got Claude. You've got Perplexity. You've got now Gamma that's making all your presentations for you and things like that. Use AI for good. So going back to calling a friend of mine, and he's actually in the industry. He's launched a sovereign data center in the UK, MediaStream AI, and they're using Manchester's, like the canal water in Manchester, to cool down the data centers, and they're cleaning that water and then sending it out to households. And like if you think out the box like that, so I think what's AI? Or what have platforms been built for is to help people, right? Is to improve efficiencies. So it's about just even having best guidelines and best practices on how to, I'd say, navigate around AI, the platforms, but more than anything, working out ways on how to use AI for good. So that's to cut costs, obviously, but look at efficiencies. How can we use it to help the overall, I'd say, operation be a lot more efficient?
And what's your view on where we are and where we're going? And so that the Manchester Canal is a good example. So what happens there exactly? So the water comes in from the canal, cools the data center, and is then cleaned, purified, and stuff, and then sent out to be.
Yeah. And I don't know the mechanics around it because I don't work for Manchester Water, so not Thames Water. But yeah, so things like that, and I think. Like you said, everyone wants to make money. Everyone's got a new technology or audience. That audiences, oh my gosh. Now we've got so many devices. I'm at home watching TV. I've got my laptop on. And I know I don't sound very sustainable right now. And let's say my sisters are messaging me. How can you reach that person in that household more efficiently rather than guesstimating, basically?
Okay. Any top tips on how ad tech companies, marketers, advertising companies generally can think about this or are thinking about this?
Absolutely. Do you know what? Right. So there's been a lot of redundancies in our industry as well. I would say upskill your staff to really just understand the programs out there and what bodes well for the business, research, take part, even create a white paper, not to make yourself look good, but just the honest lay of the land. And SBS, we actually, we've got a white paper called Adapt to Thrive. So it was literally the lay of the independent agency land, how agencies are adapting to thrive to, keep sort of moving forward. And then you've got alliances, right, of agencies that come together that work closely with brands. So it's about creating those, I know it sounds all fluffy and, what have you, and these are words that we hear, but actually create those alliances, actually have chats. I think IAB are doing a really good job because they've got a sustainability committee. They've got various committees where they're actually, working on frameworks, where they're actually educating, where you're getting actual examples on how businesses and corporations can be a lot more sustainable. Work with a partner, again, not just to tick the box, to really know who the good actors are, let's say.
There was a trust index, and I can't remember who did it, but it meant I was at OpenX at the time, and OpenX were at the top of the SSP Trust Index. The name of the company that did it will come to mind, but that was quite interesting. I wonder if we could. Sorry?
Ubiquity?
No, it wasn't Ubiquity. It'll come back to me. But I wonder if we could do something like that with sustainability, like the top 100 most sustainable ad tech companies, let's say, for example. Because if that was published monthly and it was measured in some sort of meaningful way, then people would want to be on that list, and they'd want to be as high on that list as they could. It might start driving behavior by kind of measuring it and calling it out.
Absolutely. I love that. I actually love that. Because, when you get to a certain size, you have, any sort of facts and figures, you have to actually publish. I think that's actually a really, really good idea.
Who would run that, do you think? The IAB?
Forbes.
I'll make it bigger.
Yeah, too right. definitely. Forbes is quite traditional. IAB reminds me of the Ministry of Defence, but it's like the Ministry of it's like our Ministry of Defence, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that maybe not the IAB, because the problem they have is obviously they're a member organisation and people pay money to be a member, and you wouldn't necessarily, if you weren't so sustainable, you wouldn't necessarily want to pay money for them to shout out that you're not so sustainable. So it'd probably have to be someone a little bit with less skin in the game.
Yeah. So PwC, I know that they are, and JP Morgan. They've got their digital. They've got their digital departments and digital initiatives to understand more around that. The chain, let's say, it could be a financial service, but someone that's quite neutral and agnostic. Also, someone that is like very, very, sort of present in the world in terms of their name, their reputation, and a credible source as well. Because you're right. Actually, it's almost like marking your own homework, isn't it?
Yeah. So actions compound, don't they? So if 5,000 people view this, let's say, and all 5,000 of those people were to go away and do one thing today, which would compound if everybody did it, what would that one thing be, do you think, that would help make our industry a little bit more sustainable? Something easy for somebody to do.
Our industry or the general?
Or either.
Again, research. Research AI tools that you're actually using, because we give away a lot of information about ourselves. So research tools that you're using, look at their company ethics, their policies, who they even hire, the LLMs, like who's actually populating them, who's sort of training them, because that's when you see bias in output more than anything. But I would say do something good, do something green. If your planners or buyers, really understand, where your advertisements are running. There's so many great reporting systems out there where you actually get full transparency in terms of URLs. You've got your bundle IDs, but there's certain platforms out there where it's just a black box. Don't know what's running, don't know where it's running, when it's running, etc. So really, really hone in on your strategy. Don't rinse and repeat. I think rinse and repeat is very easy when it comes to buying, and it makes us lazy, and that could just lend itself to smartphones or smart buying.
So curation can help with that, right? Because you can decide the audiences on the sales side, build that audience, and then the DSP only has to then make decisions on a much smaller number of impressions, and it kind of knows that every impression it gets is going to be relevant because that's already been done.
Absolutely. And the ad calls, thousands, millions of ad calls that are going, no one knows what the floor price is. So it's almost like advertisers are bidding, and it's all these bidding wars. So for one slot, where back in the day you'd get tags, you get tags, set your tags live, and that's it. And then, off you go. Now, for that one placement, it probably takes enough energy to light up Canary Wharf for that one. So I think it's just be mindful, definitely.
Brilliant. Niki, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Pleasure to see you again. And I'll see you soon.
Yes, most definitely. Thank you.